Hello guys, and welcome to Mr. Walker's A Day in a Storm album mixing video guide, whatever. This video is intended to show you guys the way this project is set up and how I went about to transform these recordings into the final product. So I'll be going through the VST effects and the channel setups, and this is all done in Reaper, the Reaper digital audio workstation. So if you are not familiar with this program, you can just watch this video and hopefully you'll be inspired to work in Reaper if you are still looking for a DAW solution. That's a funny word, DAW. DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, D-A-W, DAW. Well, anyway, where do we start? I can start by apologizing for the crappy sound from my quote headset, unquote. This is not a headset, it's a couple of microphones I stuck into a glass jar because I have no mic stand right now. It's one SM57 and one SM58 recording my sound with like full volume boost, so it's gonna be a bit noisy. Anyway, the music is quite loud, so I'm gonna play some right now. If you're listening at a very loud volume, just turn it down a bit. Okay, so I guess you're all familiar with this album, Mr. Walker, A Day in a Storm. If you're not, just click on the link below to go to the Bandcamp site or listen to it at Spotify. Just search for the album name or Mr. Walker. So let's just start. I don't really have a plan to go through all of this. I'll just start at the top and explain what it is. Okay, so here we are at Reaper. Version 4.31, just updated it right now, before this video. So this is the arrangement view. These are the tracks right here. And here's the mixing panel. And of course in Reaper you can just customize as you want, and you can hide windows, you can make them larger and stuff. You can drag them out like this. And yeah, my graphics card is a bit buggy or whatever, so sometimes these panels may disappear. It's not Reaper's fault, it's when I'm recording a video like this and stuff. Okay, so the drum bus up on the top. What's a bus? It's a channel that all sub-channels go through. So these two channels go through this channel, and this channel goes through this one. So this is actually the kick group, and these are the kick tracks. So I record the kick drum here and process it with some compression and equalizers, and then I send it to the kick group, which sort of gels these two tracks together, and then this signal is sent up to the drum bus, which has no effects at all really. Some people like to use drum bus compression or maybe some final EQ and stuff here, and it's all up to you. There is no right or wrong way, actually. It's just different ways to work. So okay, the drum bus here, it has no VST effects at all, and it's gonna pop this window up for me. Here in Reaper you can select all the VSTs you have in your computer, and you can put them in folders like compressor, and you have all the compressors here, and yeah, stuff like that. Cancel. So let's go down to, well, if you wonder why I have a drum bus, it's just for the simple reason to be able to mute the drums at all, all of them at once. Or just solo them. So now it's only the drums playing. Okay, so that's the only reason I use it in this project, and also to adjust the volume while mixing. So if I think all the drums are too high in volume, I can just lower them down. Control Z to undo that. Yep. Okay, kick group is the same principle as the drum bus, but it's a bus for the kick tracks, but this one has some effects on it. We're gonna look here. It's been really a long time ago since I came in here to work, so I don't even remember what I've done right now, you know. I just look at this EQ curve and it looks pretty crazy. Oops, sorry guys. This looks crazy because the kick tracks are recorded with a well, the kick track. This is a recorded track. It's recorded with a really crappy mic, and it just really sucked. So, to make a long story short, so here's some equalizer to. Apparently, I wanted to get rid of some. Yeah, now I remember. This is the 60 Hertz band. When I hold my mouse over it, it says -4 dB, 60 Hertz. So this is to let the bass guitar have its own like space in the mix. So the kick drum and the bass guitar, you don't want those two to fight each other in the mix. And unfortunately, they are in the same area of the frequency span. So the bass guitar is gonna be like all the way from 40 Hertz to maybe 300 Hertz, where it's gonna be like dominating, and then it's just gonna taper off all the way up to I don't know, 10K, 15K, depending on how bright your sound is from the bass guitar. Also, if you have new strings, you'll get some nice action going on in this area, in the higher registries. Okay, so here I decided to pull this down 4 dB to leave the bass guitar some room. And what else have I done? I have, well, as you can see, I've just scooped out some frequencies to leave room for other shit. The kick drum doesn't really need a lot of mids, because that's gonna make it sound like it's a jazz kick drum, or I don't know, some other music style. In metal and in this mix, there's a lot of stuff going on in this area, in the mids. Like Gustav's vocals are in this area here, and then he has a peak somewhere around here. And of course the air in his vocals are up here. All the S sounds and FN, like the attack from his words. Okay, so basically the kick drum is just, if you simplify it, you could just say it needs a lot of bass, but it doesn't. It shouldn't fight with the bass guitar, and then it's gonna have some attack, really. Attack and bass, that's... if you simplify it a whole lot, that's what a kick drum is about in metal, basically. That's just absurdly simplified, okay? Don't take my word for it, but if I had to pick two frequency spans that would represent a kick drum, it would be the bass and the attack around the 4K, 5K area. And the rest here is just to shape it according to every other instrument. Mixing is like, I don't know, a big ass dough that you have to knead to make pizza. And it doesn't matter where you start, you just have to start somewhere and start kneading it. And then you notice what you need to adjust after a while. And of course, when I mix, I always start out with the drums and the bass guitar, and then the vocals, and then the guitars. But sometimes I just jump around without any plan whatsoever. So, yeah, mixing is pretty chaotic sometimes. Here is a multiband compressor. It's like, it's evening out the. Oh, here we go. It's evening out the different frequency spans independently from each other. So what have I done here? Ratio 1 is not doing anything on the bass frequency band. I'm just compressing the mids and the attack mostly. Let's look at it. This is GVST. You can just Google this and download, let's see, Yeah, you can download his Graham Yeadon is his name or something. He's made a set of really good VSTs. I have to recommend them. Kick group, solo, and listen. So here we actually saw the different bands and how they were compressed. This is just to maintain a pretty consistent level of my kick drum when I was playing it. Not much to explain here, really. I've been going a bit too in depth here on the parameters. That's not my point in this video, really. I'm not going to talk about every single parameter. That would take ages. And for some reason, I decided it was a good idea to have a limiter on the kick group, and yeah, it seems to work in this project. But I have to warn you, sometimes it does not work at all. It just really kills the punch and attack, and it's just gonna sound flat and really boring. So you can try putting a limiter on like individual tracks like this, but try not to, would be my advice. I don't know, try to fix it with a compressor first, and I'm not gonna go in and like disable it and see. This is not a mixing video. I'm not gonna mix it right now for you guys to see how I was mixing it. I'm just gonna explain what I pretty much did as best as I recall. So here's the actual kick drum, the one I recorded with a really crappy mic. I wonder if we can listen to it without the effects. Actually, I'm just gonna leave the kick group effects on and just disable the effects on this track for the kick drum. That sounds just horrible, really horrible. This is the effects enabled. It still sounds horrible, and you can hear the gating action from the cymbals sounding like that. And yeah, this kick track sounds pretty horrible, and believe me, I have spent a lot of time EQing this track and compressing, and I probably spent like 2 days straight on just a kick drum until I realized, well, I'm not going to be able to use this for the way I had a clear vision of how this project was going to sound. So I just noticed immediately this is not going to work. So that's where this track comes in, which is a kick trigger. And I'm using the AP Trigger 2 here to load some samples in and trigger the kick track from the incoming audio signal, basically. So I duplicated this track down here and slapped some AP Trigger on it, loaded some samples I have made myself from my kick drum combined with other people's kick drum from the internet, and just pre-processed it a bit and basically loaded them up here. 5 samples. Oh, it's soloed. I got 5 samples here to blend in with my original kick drum. You might not notice a big difference between these, but it helps to have several samples to make it a bit dynamic, at least. So like the human ear is really good at perceiving what do you call them, like patterns. If you hear the same sound over and over again, you're gonna really catch up on that. So yeah, this is just AP Trigger triggering signals. It's really easy. Load them up here and load sample, pick a sample, set the threshold level, and you can even filter out sounds. If you have like cymbal bleed in the kick drum that's coming in here, you can just filter that out, so it basically listens only for low frequencies and triggers from that. You can select like the mode and stuff, dynamic, random. I'm using random here, so it's gonna alternate between all of these samples as it wants. So did I mention here on the, let's see, yeah, the kick track. I got some compression going on just to even out the levels, and the attack is fairly high to let the transient through, because it's gonna get compressed even more later. So you can, if you're using several compressors like I do here, like one here, and then yeah, a multi-compressor here, and then you have the master bus compression going on over here. So you can like leave a higher attack setting, I believe, because it's going to get processed later on. But on the other hand, it could affect the compressors that are coming after this in a negative way. If it's like too powerful, it's going to make it pump and stuff. So you really have to just listen and experiment and learn and compare with your previous results. Okay, and this EQ here is to filter out some bleed. And here's a cool thing. I set up a, let's see, where was it? Yeah, parameter modulation. This is a power of Reaper. I don't think you can do this in every digital audio workstation out there. I don't know if Cubase, Pro Tools, and Logic has this, but you can make an incoming audio signal here, audio control signal, click that. You can make that incoming signal control a parameter. So this audio signal that's coming in here, it's actually the kick drum, and it's controlling this low pass filter. I'm just gonna play and you'll see what happens. As you see, when the kick drum hits, it's gonna open up this filter all the way, and immediately after that it's gonna jump back down to this frequency, and it's gonna cut out like cymbal bleed and noise and all that. So this makes it easier for you to process your individual tracks. And some people think this is the same as simply putting a gate, but it's not. A gate cuts out the whole frequency span, so it's gonna mute the track after the threshold has been passed. That means if you have a tom drum, I'm gonna get there soon, and we got the same principle going on here. But if you have a tom drum, you're gonna hit it, and your stick, when your drumstick hits the skin, it's gonna produce a sharp high frequency sound, which is the attack. But after that sound, really in a tom drum, there's no other high frequency sounds left. All there's left is the resonating body of the tom drum, and that's not gonna be up in the 3K area. Otherwise your tom drum would sound like psss. Does it sound like that? No. So it's gonna have a body of like maximum 200. I don't know, but for safety reasons you can just leave it at 1K, and it's gonna grab all of the sound from your tom drum. Whereas a gate would just like open up when you hit the drum, and then the release parameter would like control after how many milliseconds would this close entirely, while this one just does not close entirely. It just cuts out the cymbal bleed and lets the tom vibrate freely for as long as you like, for as long as the tom vibrates. So this method is really cool, and you should try it. And if you have questions about this parameter modulation, I guess I could upload a video of only this or something. But it's not really hard in Reaper. You just yeah, you can select the effects parameters. No, actually I'm in the wrong area. Yeah, this is where you do it. So you just go like, if I want to parameter modulate the wet mix, here's the same window as this one. And then I can click here, so the audio control signal modulates the wet, this knob here, the dry wet knob. And you just set up the attack release how you want it to, and like here is the baseline. Now I want it to start from 50%, and you just see here it's at 50%. So it's going to modulate from here and onward. And you select that here, positive or negative direction. So it's really cool and pretty easy. I'm just going to disable that. We don't want it to modulate. And I want it to have 100% wet, yeah. Okay, the second EQ here is just to scoop out the mids, because basically my kick drum, my recorded my recorded kick track only has mids. Basically, it has like very little lows, and the attack is laughable. So I just desperately try to fix that here, and you see these crazy curves. What do they say? Professional mixers usually say you shouldn't have to EQ more than like plus minus 3 decibels. And here I'm at minus 7.5, so... but this is not a professional mix, although the aim was to sound sort of professional, and I think I succeeded, judging from comments, and I'm really thankful for that, so thank you guys. And here's the next EQ. I'm using like several EQs because it's just easier to work with. I have... basically, I carve the sound here, and then I go like, okay, this is a good starting sound for furthermore polishing. So I just add one more EQ to further polish from what I'm hearing from here. I could do everything in one EQ. That's pretty cool in Reaper. You can just add a whole lot of bands like this and have 13 band EQ. But I'm not gonna do that here. And you can just set up exactly the way you want. It's really easy. Then I have a compressor at the end, which has a low attack setting. So it reacts quickly to the volume changes in my kick track. Yeah, you can see the parameters here. And a lot of people ask me like my settings for the snare drum compression, and if I gave you my parameters like this and you put them on your snare drum, I can guarantee you it's not going to sound the same. These settings are highly, or I mean entirely, depending on the material that's being processed. Otherwise, if it was like that, just imagine professional mixers could just make a template from their latest hit record of, I don't know, Britney Spears, and they could just like upload that and sell it for thousands of dollars if it would produce the exact same sound as Britney Spears' latest record. But it does not. It does not work like that. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, here's a kick trigger track, and we just went through this, the AP trigger, and we got some equalizing here. Even though I did pre-equalize these tracks, these samples, but that was just to make the samples sound good to my ears when it's alone, like played just by itself. And now it's in a project and it's reacting with other tracks, so I have to adjust it even more. That's the art of mixing. It's make sounds fit together. If all sounds had like a huge bump in the mids, what would happen in the master track? There would be a massive buildup of mid frequencies, and you would have to pull them down, or you would have like the crappiest sounding shit mix ever. It might have sounded like diarrhea if you did it like that. Okay, that's mature. That's real mature, I reckon. Yeah. So as you see, we got the mid frequencies here, leaving room for the mids, but this time the bass is not being lowered. It's actually being amplified by 1 decibel at 60 hertz. So apparently I found it to be a good place to boost the bass piece on this track. And some attack action going on here, but not that much. Although it says I'm boosting by 8 decibels, what I'm actually doing is I'm reducing. This is a low pass, which is going like this here, and then this one is boosting that area up. So I'm combining like different filters to get a shape that I want. And then here is a really cool thing. It's a built-in special effect. Oh yeah! Special effect of Reaper. A JS effect. This is not a VST, it's a JS. You can't use this in Cubase. This is exclusive to Reaper, I believe. Or no, actually, I don't think it is. It's probably usable in other programs that has support for JS. But anyway, they came with Reaper. That's what I'm trying to say. Here is a what is it? Yeah, it's a delay plugin, but not for the cool effect delay. It's a delay for samples. You can just adjust samples. I mean, by samples, I mean the entire track. You can adjust the entire track to play a little bit before or a little bit after everything else in the whole mix. And this is to line up these samples, these transients, to line them up with the kick drums transients in here. These ones. So when I load my samples up here, I could hear like there was a phasey sound, like it sounded hollow, and I slapped this on here and just played with this additional delay amount setting, and at minus 88 samples, I found it to be a pretty good spot for to make it sound full again, not hollow. So that means these two tracks are now in phase. Sometimes you could just click the phase reverse button here, but it only shifts how do I explain it? This button flips the polarity, so this transient here would end up being up here, and this one up here would come down here. That's what this one does. But this one here is adjusting the samples to go left or right, so it's a delay. Okay, like this, or like this. Okay, the kick trigger, the kick group has been talked about. Let's try to speed up here. I'm talking way too much. You guys want to listen to some part again? Here we go. Man, Gustav's voice is fucking furious. He sounds like a rabid dog who just ate like acid, and he's tripping, and he's being Gustav. That's what it sounds like. Okay, the snare group here is the same principle as before. It's a bus group where all the snare tracks is being fed through. This is the recorded snare. Shut up, cell phone. This is a recorded snare track. It's a SM57. This is the... Shut up. Damn it. This is the snare trigger track, and this is the trigger track number 2. Okay, so you guys are going like, oh my god, this is fake. He's just using samples. And yeah. Now, it's just to augment my original snare track. But because, honestly, my miking at the... When did I record the drums for this project? It was like 2010 or something. That was almost, well, soon it was 3 years ago. And I've learned a lot more than, well, since then. So I guess I was just a newbie when I did that. The miking was inadequate, or is that correct? Inadequate. Yeah, whatever. It was not good enough, okay? And the mics I was using were just pretty bad. Although the SM57 is good. And I did use the SM58 for the bottom snare track, like miking the snare from underneath. And for some reason it just didn't sound good. And I had the weirdest angle while I was miking from the top with my SM57. I came like just over the rim of the snare. Sorry. And I was miking. If this is a snare drum here, this add band button is the snare drum, okay? And I had my mic like right here in this angle, a really steep angle. So I don't think I was capturing any sound at all. Like just a wonky hit without a really... The body and all that was just... I guess the body is more like going out in an angle like this. So you have to come up from a bit more from the top, like this, instead of like this. Anyway, so here's a snare track. We're gonna listen to it without effects. Soloed. Yeah, without effects actually meant like without its own effects. It's still being processed by the snare group and the reverb for the snare. Okay, so here's the snare effects on. And as you can hear, the snare was without the effects. It was a lot more poppy. It was it sounded like it was cracking more and sounded more powerful, really. So for some reason here, I have a gate. Yeah, I think this gate is removing some of that attack. And then the compression here. Actually, attack. Yeah, I think it's here in the multiband compression. I apparently decided the multiband was essential for some reason, and I had the high frequency band's attack setting is pretty low, and the mid frequency's attack is okay, I guess. But I think this one does, so makes it like sound less popping, less cracking. The attack here should let enough attack through. So oh yeah, and then we have a G clip here. The G clip does remove a bunch of attack. So this is just to boost the volume of the snare track. Otherwise, in the mix, like if I disable, let's try like this. I'm gonna disable these samples, the sample tracks, and I'm gonna remove the effects from the snare. Now we're gonna listen to the entire project with a snare, with just a snare drum track that has been mic'd, no samples and no effects on the snare track. See, it sounds like someone is holding their hand on the snare drum and hitting it with a stick. It's like, that's not much of a snare. Let's try this with the effects and see what effect that has. Okay, the snare drum is actually, it can be heard right now, at least, but it sounds like a smooshy thing. Let's enable these samples. Yeah, so the samples actually add a whole lot of attack, and that was my intention. That's basically the only reason I'm using samples here, because the attack, I don't know, when I was miking the snare, as I explained, the angle was really bad, so I didn't like get all the frequencies I needed, not wanted, but needed. And it sounded really horrible and just hollow and shit, so I had to scoop out the resonating frequencies. I mean, if you mic the snare from this really steep angle like this, you're gonna get a whole lot of frequencies that resonate. It's gonna be like bing, bing on each fucking hit. And to remove those, you have to sort of narrowly scoop out those frequencies, because when you then you're gonna need compression on a snare drum. That's just a fact for metal, I guess. I'm saying I guess because I don't know, and no one really knows for sure, I guess. But I guess, fuck it. When you add compression later, those ping sounds are gonna jump up in volume. You're gonna hear it through the whole mix. It's gonna be like ping, ping, ping. So yeah, I had to scoop them out. leave some room for the bass drum and stuff. Not that there's any frequencies here at all, but actually it was the bass drum that was audible through my snare drum track, so you have to sometimes high pass the snare drum. Actually, that's standard, everybody does it at like 100 hertz or 200 hertz, depends on your snare drum. If your snare drum has no body and it's just like a then you're not gonna need a lot of bass. And that's a good thing to remember when you're mixing. You can just think like minimalistic. It's funny for me to say that in this project, but eliminate frequencies you don't need. It's like, oh, do I need this 20,000 hertz frequency span on my I don't know, bass guitar? Probably not. It's gonna be just adding noise to the mix, especially if you're running a semi-distorted sound or something, I don't know, but you can just listen. How much information is there actually in this frequency span? Can I remove it? If yes, then do it. You know, why not? So, but yeah, you have to make sure you don't remove anything of value to the signal, to the source sound, to the instrument. Okay, enough about the snare drum, I guess. You've seen the things here, the effects. The G-clip here, as I said, was just to boost the volume so it would be audible in the mix, to fight with the guitars and all that. Here's a monstrous equalizer specializing in removing that horrible ping I was talking about. Actually, let's go in here, solo, and listen. Listen, listen, listen. One more time. Okay, so here you can notice the canny sound. It sounds like a can, it sounds like a box, and the resonating frequencies are like boom, boom, each fucking hit. And you can also hear the bass drum right after the snare drum hits. And I'm gonna enable these two guys again, and go again. Instead, one might resonate like this now. The snare drum has no body. Yeah, that's pretty much true. It lost a lot of its body, and it's gonna be that way. You can't remove annoying frequencies without also removing frequencies that you want. I mean, in this frequency span, there's not only annoying ping sound, there's also the body of the drum, some of it at least. So yeah, by doing this, I'm actually destroying the snare drum. But there, remember this. You always have to weigh up the pros and cons. If I disable this one, it's gonna sound fucking crap in the mix. That's gonna just destroy everything. It's gonna destroy the guitars and the listening experience. So I might choose to just destroy the snare a little bit in favor of the entire mix. I think this is a common mistake that like hinders people from actually progressing in their mixes. If you think too much about the individual tracks and you want the bass guitar to sound punching and like rumbling and it's gonna have the distortion and everything is gonna be crystal clear, and then you want the guitars to be just the same, you want the vocals to be just the same, you want the kick drum to be like super powerful and also have a lot of attack, and everything is gonna have like bass and attack, and everything is gonna sound like super fucking crystal clear. Well, that's not gonna happen, because that way you're mixing like track by track. You're not actually mixing a project like that. So you always have to weigh the positive with the negative, and if the negative is bigger than the positive, then you have to like adjust so the track is playing well with the rest of the tracks, even if that means, well, the track is gonna take some damage or whatever you want to call it. Okay, snare trigger. Listen, the samples here are... It's something from the Andy Sneap forum. I got them from that forum like 2-3 years ago. I mean, yeah, if you wonder what I learned mixing it from the internet, it's mostly from Andy Sneap forum. And those guys there have been super helpful. And like, when I was a newbie, I was just reading for maybe 6 months, maybe more. And then I was like, okay, I want to try this myself now. So with all the knowledge I had read, I could set up my own project and record something simple. And I could just link that to you guys in the description down below as well. I'm just going to take a note here. 2008 project. Yeah. So I remember to link it. I tried it on that project and then I uploaded clips. People were giving feedback and I learned even more. And then I learned as much as I needed to start this project. And then I taught myself basically by just trial and error. And but it's really important to collect feedback from other people, because when you're new to this, experienced people will hear stuff that you don't. That's a fact. So yeah. This snare sounds pretty thin, but it has a lot of attack, so it's gonna go well together with my original snare drum track. And we got some EQ here adjusting, nothing special here. I mean, just lag. The Dominion is a plugin to control transients, and you can just adjust the length of the transient and how much you want to boost that length, or so to speak. And you can also suppress, you can suppress the sustain. You can make it sound tighter and shorter, like instead of boom, you can make it sound boom. So I really love my snare drum imitation, boom, boom. And also here in time adjustment we got the same thing as for the kick drum sample. This is just to align the samples with the original snare drum track. Proceed down to the snare trigger 2. We got this sound. Huh. This actually caught me by surprise. It's is it supposed to be like this? Oh yeah, okay, I get it. I have set the signal to only play. This is the like out signal, and if it's gonna play the sample number 1 or if it's gonna play sample number 2. If the signal is under this level here, it's gonna play the sample number 2, which is this one. And I had it set to like this, so it's only gonna play sample number 2 at all hits. Basically, I could just have removed this sample here. Yeah, anyway, got some EQ here, boosting the body, the low mids, and apparently removing some attack. Once again, this is to melt these tracks together. Add attack to another track, you can remove some from another, or you can just try to balance like that. Not much more to say here really. The snare track sounds like this if you play it just by itself. Yeah. Okay. When I'm listening to it like this separately, it's not really impressing. I'm being shocked by myself, or I'm being shocked to myself really. Just what? My snare sounds like that? Damn, that's pretty bad. But in the project, it sounds good, and that's all that matters. It fits the sound, and that's why you mix. You just want everything to fit together and create a one coherent sound, not like 30 different sounds at once. Tom group. What do we have here? What do we have here? Compression. Attack 10 milliseconds. 200. Release. Da 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 da. Yeah. Equalizer. Removing some of the rumble, but not too much, because the toms actually are in this area, so it would be stupid to high pass more than that. The mids just being adjusted a bit. Here's a cool plugin, Boot EQ MK2. This is from Bootsy, and he makes free plugins mostly, I guess, at least when I was active and looking for plugins on the net. Which I, by the way, have to start doing again soon, because I'm gonna upgrade my rig and pretty much install all plugins from scratch. Yeah, it's just an EQ, but it's not just an EQ. It's actually it has some saturation and warming effects here, and this knob here is awesome. It's well, it's for the low frequencies. It's warming up the low frequencies. Yep, I'm disgusting. You're just gonna have to live with that. Let's see if we can find a tom hit here. Boom. Solo. And I'm gonna disable this entire tom group processing track. Okay, now compare. A bit more attack when I had these on, and I don't know if you can, like, if you could notice now, but this setting actually does a whole lot. I'm gonna show it in the master track later. It might be hard to notice on the toms right here, but it does help to make it more punchy in the bass frequencies, but without, like, or punchy, I mean, it makes it thicker in the bass frequencies without, like, mudding things up. Then I'm just I can't talk right now. Just need some water. One sec. Oh yeah. Then I'm just adjusting these frequencies here a little bit. Well, actually by quite a bit. And yeah, it's a really cool plugin. You should try it. Another G multi to what? To here, threshold is set at 0, 0, so these are doing nothing. -10 and 10 ratio. So this one is the one that's working. Apparently I thought I needed something that would just control the actual attack, the actual transients. So in the high register. So this one is controlling those and like pushing them down if they're too high. Tom number 1 has a compressor with like pre-compression. It's opening the envelope 7 milliseconds before it actually detects the hit. The attack is 0 and ratio 9. Okay. Same type of equalizer as on the kick drum. Here's a parameter modulated filter to open up when I hit the drum and then close back down when. Well, let's just look at it. That was a fast reaction. And as you can see or hear, I have a lot of latency right now when I'm recording this video. Because I'm not using ACO, I'm using the Microsoft Sound Mapper. That was the only driver that could that would allow me to record my... That was my chair, by the way. I'm not farting. The Sound Mapper allows me to record my desk like this and my own sound while I'm playing Reaper. Okay, EQ, carving out the mids, the low mids, the mids here. Boosting up the low mids or the bass, high bass, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Recomp, another compression. EQ, I'm just adjusting the mids, the higher mids here. by -1.6. G-clip I'm using on the tom here to boost the volume, obviously. I mean, there are like 1,000 ways you could boost volume, and apparently I decided to go for G-clip. Sometimes G-clip can add punch and attack. Just sometimes, if you use it sparingly. If you use it too much, you're gonna hear the track loses its punch. Maybe I could just try to hear. Let's go like the clip setting here. If I put it on 50%, it's actually the same as leaving it at 99 and just boosting the volume a whole lot. If I could boost the volume more than 12 dB, which I can do like here, I could boost it from the EQ coming into G-clip. Okay, let's go back to the default setting I had. 99. Okay, this one has some attack now. If I go and boost here like 20 dB. Did that sound good? Did that sound like a lot of attack to you? No. If it did, I guess you should reconsider your decision. Even at 15, it does not sound good at all. 10 dBs. Now it's starting to get some attack, but I have still clipped it too much, and you can see it. You can actually see it in the wave here. It's being chopped off by quite a bit. Okay, let's leave it at 0 and continue here. Regate. Here I have a gate with a really high release setting, and that's not mitigating the effect of this parameter modulated filter. It's just like cleaning up the long tail. If it's been continuing like forever, it's gonna just cut it out after a while. That's basically what this gate does. And I have gone in here to manually adjust that as well. I have a fade out here. I have done that manually for each tom hit on this track. Or I think it's on the other tracks as well. Some songs, like this one, have really few fill-ins and stuff on the toms. Yeah, I've done the same for all tom drums. The trigger tracks don't need that though. And I'm gonna get to that now. The trigger track here is oops, AP trigger. And it's playing my own tom drum. This is my tom drum that I sampled before recording the project. So it's what do you call it? It's a sample augmentation, but it's the same drum. It's just a sample taken from my drum before I started recording for real. And then I put that sample back on the project just to augment the tom drum, the drums, without so that I could just boost the now I can boost the highs without boosting the bleed. Basically, that's why. So as you can see here on the original recorded tom track, I have nothing that boosts the highs. That's done here, because this one does not have cymbal bleed. It's almost like that record where, who did that again? Was it? There was some band. Man, I should know this, really. It's a shame, but shame on me. There was a band who recorded all drums individually, separately, in different takes. So the drummer would play the kick drum through the entire song and only the kick drum and record that, and then they went one more time through the song and he would play only the snare and then only the toms, the tom 1 and then tom 2 and 3, And then I guess he only played the cymbals. Or maybe he even played one cymbal at a time, I don't know. But so he had like bleed-free tracks for the drums. But sometimes you also want the bleed to create this natural 3D sound with depth. You don't want it to sound flat and totally isolated, some electronic drums or something. So the bleed is actually good to have sometimes. But in this case, if I boosted my this track with that amount, it would just sound horrible. And I know it would sound through the mix. You would hear, like, when the tom hits and when the gate opens, you would hear the cymbals being boosted in the mix. You don't really want that. And here we go again. Time adjustments just to align the samples with the original. Tom 2 is just the same thing. Compression, EQ with the filter modulation thing. Some EQ here, boosting whatever I felt was necessary for that tom in particular, and then cutting out whatever I was feeling that was necessary. Recomp here, compression, EQ, and then a G-clip to boost the volume. And this sample track for Tom 1 does not have the phase switch flipped, but this one does. I don't have a scientific reason for that. I just listened to the track and it sounded better with this flipped. So when I was recording this, I guess the distance or something made it to sort of phase out a bit. And well, with these samples, maybe I recorded the samples in a from a different distance or something from the original track. I'm not really sure, but it does sound better at least. It sounds more. Usually, when something is out of phase, it will lose a whole lot of bass. You will notice it in the bass frequencies mostly, and then you will also notice in the highs where it sounds like hollow. It's gonna sound like it's a carved out wooden box that your sound is being played through or something. And when you flip the phase, you will hear, if you hear the bass becomes more prominent, then you're in better phase than before. You might not be in total phase, but it's gonna be better. Okay, tom number 3, same thing here. Recomp, equalizer. Oh shit. Yeah, this tom has a big boost in the bass frequencies of 92 Hertz. Probably due to my bad microphone. I was using the JJ Labs microphones, a Swedish brand made in China, I guess. Just a really crappy and cheap set of mics. And I was miking at an angle again, so I guess I didn't receive all the goodness from the bass frequencies of the tom drum, of the floor tom, which this one is. Yeah, basically, I had to boost a lot to get that. Recomp, G-clip, same thing. The panning here is 37% left on the first tom, 20% right on the second tom, and 50% right on the tom number 3. This is only because I imagine myself sitting behind the drums while mixing this. And I adjusted the panning here in both with headphones and without, to sort of position this drum in the stereo field about the same as it is positioned in an angle to me when I'm sitting behind the drums. So it sounds like my kit, basically. Both in panning and yeah, everything else.